Hello and welcome to Mentors Coaching FM, the show that helps you tame the business beast and build a marketing machine so that you can focus on helping your clients get the transformation you promise. I'm Gail Seymour, founder of Mentors Coaching, the results-oriented growth platform where learning providers of all stripes can create and deliver courses and programs that handle scheduling, payments and delivery all in one place with no monthly fee. Just a simple, low commission structure that means if you don't earn, you don't pay. Okay, and so today I have with me Joe Templin, who is a Swiss Army knife, ultramarathoner, special needs parent, former international taekwondo champion, and unrepentant geek. I say it, I've said this probably about 3 times now, but I really love the description of an unrepentant geek. I can really identify with that.
People need to embrace who they are. Let your freak flag fly, as we say. I don't care if you love Star Wars, which actually is much more prevalent these days. People are admitting it because of exposure, or you're a comic book individual, or you love 17th century romance novels. If you've got a deep passion around anything, let it imbue you, let it power you. And if that deep abiding passion happens to be across multiple areas like it is for me, so much the better, because then you get these different areas of understanding that can hopefully cross-pollinate and produce something new and interesting.
Excellent. Absolutely. I mean, I like boating and cats and knitting and crochet and those, possibly much more pedestrian pursuits than your ultra marathoning, but yeah, they're certainly.
You probably also don't have the same sort of traumas that I do, or the need for challenge, or some of the other things that I have wrestled with in the past that drew me into some of these much more difficult areas.
So now tell us a little bit about your background of the Swiss Army knife, and what got you into ultra marathoning to start with. I mean, that's certainly an endurance.
Let's hold off the ultra marathoning for a couple of minutes, because as I discuss my other backgrounds, it will make a little bit more sense as to how I got into ultra marathons. So my background is I'm one of 6 kids, grew up in a small farm community. My mom was a nun. Yes, my mom, the nun. And then she was an educator. My dad was the first person in his family to go to college, ended up going on military scholarship. So it was military, and then ran a consulting firm. So if you've got an educator and a consultant as your 2 parents, and you grew up in a small community with literally where we did not have a traffic light until after I was out of grad school. It flashes after 5 p.m. still. It's on the corner between one of the churches and the town hall and the general store where I used to go on and buy my mom her cigarettes as a kid. Okay, so this is the sort of environment that I grew up with. And if you look at that, you're like, okay, that makes sense how somebody could develop into being a polymath. I say polymath as opposed to Renaissance man, because I can't draw a straight line even with a ruler. I'm absolutely horrible there. I did not inherit that capability from my mom, nor did the musical ability from my grandparents. So I know my limitations in some ways, and I also push my limitations because that's what we learned. So growing up in the farm, you learned hard work. You needed to figure things out. You needed to have the capability of shifting gears. You need to have a really strong work ethic, obviously. And on top of that, I was also severely asthmatic. So I did not have the physical body that like my cousins did or anything like that. It was much more in the original Teddy Roosevelt mold of having a strong mind but not a strong body. And Teddy Roosevelt's father told him, you've got the mind, not the body. And so they gave him whiskey and cigars and a regime of hard physical labor, which turned him into the cowboy that he became. With me, it was, I actually died at 10 years old. Flatline, bright light, floating up out of the body, the whole 9 yards. I came on back. And so I was hyperactive before that, and I've been adult diagnosed as ADHD. But that moment obviously impacted me tremendously, and I am just absolutely driven. My friends joke that I burn the candle at both ends and in the middle of a flamethrower. So when you look at that sort of background, being able to get multiple degrees, everything from physics to finance to psychology, to running multiple businesses simultaneously, to writing a dozen books, to doing podcasts and things like that, it makes sense as to my background. And the need for challenge manifested itself in the ultra running. I hate running, by the way. Let me put that out there. All right. And I'd feel bad about admitting that, but David Goggins, the ultra marathoner and world record holder in terms of pull-ups, former Navy SEAL, admitted that. And so I don't feel bad about admitting it anymore. So yeah, I hate running, but I love the effects of running. I love the challenge of running. I love how it feels when I stop and I get to have that beer or have that chocolate milk afterwards. I love the challenge of, hey, it's going to rain and I hate running in the rain, so I'm going out. This morning when I went out, actually, I'm not running because I'm recovering from an injury, but I went out and did a 2-mile walk. It was below freezing and dark out. And, that first breath where it's like, and it wakes you up like this. So being able to say, I know it's cold, I know it's nasty, I know I'd rather be in the warm bed or sitting on the couch reading something or having a cup of coffee and talking with my friends, I'm going to go out and do this hard thing. That naturally translates into other arenas. And so the ultra running grew out of my running team, Road Hazards. I started doing Ragnars, which are 200-ish team-mile relay races, because one of my buddies called me up and said, hey, I got a challenge for you. I'm like, oh, challenge sounds good. And then I ended up doing it and did my first one. Then the next year I did 5. And so during the COVID shutdown, my running team is like, okay, we've got to do something crazy so we don't go insane. And so we started doing like midnight 5Ks and beer miles on your own and virtual Ragnars where you would have to text the next person to be ready to leave and things like this. And we're like, hey, let's do a backyard ultra. So backyard ultra is every hour you run a set distance, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 miles, and then you just keep doing that hour after hour after hour. So if you run 1 mile, okay, you get 40, 50 minutes of break in between. If you run 3 miles, then especially if you're slow like me and you're really piling on the miles, you're getting like maybe 20 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, especially as you're getting into it. And I started at 5 a.m. Instead of 9 because I was just, I don't know, I messed up there. So I got to 30 miles, so I'm past the marathon. By the way, I swore I would never do another marathon again because of all the stuff that goes into it, recovery and all that. I don't like doing stuff for 4 to 5 hours at a pop. I'm not a fast runner, by the way. So I got to mile 30, mile 36. Everybody else has dropped out. And by the time I was like mile 40, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go for a double marathon, because if you do 2 marathons, 2 negatives make a positive from a mathematical point of view. So in my twisted mind, especially at that point when your mind is starting to go weird, I just stretched on out and did a whole 52.5 miles. And then as I'm standing there in the shower, drinking my beer and blood running down my leg and everything, I'm like, you know what? With a little bit more planning and better nutrition, I can go further. So 6 months later, I ended up doing a full 100 kilometers in a day. I did it in roughly 2 hours less than I did the 52.5 miles. And I was training to do 125 for January, but I broke my leg. So I'm just really starting to get back into it.
I love the,
So that's how I got into ultra running.
I love the
two negatives make a positive, but just keep going until it'll cancel itself out.
Yeah.
That's definitely fatigue thinking for you there.
Absolutely. I was getting the brain fog. And like when I was about mile 40 into it, I got a call from one of my really close friends, and she was having some issues, like serious emotional issues. So here I am, my tank is almost empty, physically, emotionally, all this. And what I did is I essentially turned to her while I'm out shuffling along, because I wasn't running at that point, I was shuffling. And spent the next hour and all of my emotional energy helping her, basically talking her back from the light. And this is one of the things that my mom, the nun, taught me early on in my life. If you're having a bad day, go help somebody else. And so turning around and helping her at that point helped me get through those last dozen miles.
Excellent. So that was during COVID. Now, I know you told me before we started recording that you're on a mission. And so I want you to tell me, you know, what's the mission? How did it start and how's it going?
Okay, so it's not quite like the Blues Brothers were on a mission from God sort of thing, where they're, but you know, there is a lot of music associated with it. It is, again, going back to my mom, you know, serving something bigger than you, having an ideal, something that you're focused on, team before self, you know, putting your success not as the primary thing that you're working on, but as the outcome of doing things for other individuals. So that, for example, getting an A on your test is some people's goal. Really what it is, though, is it should be an outcome of having deep knowledge, of truly understanding. Because if you're really focused on learning, then the tests are just, you know, signposts along the way. It just happens in terms of what you're doing. So when I look at what I am creating between the book, the speeches, the podcasts that I'm on, the way I'm impacting individuals, my goal originally was to, you know, make New York Times bestseller. Sounds great. You know, and then I was like, all right, you know, I want to be able to sell a million copies of the book. Oh, that's wonderful. But that's all me focused. And if you focus on yourself, then you become very externally driven. It's like everything's dependent on the number of sales. Everything's dependent on how people like me. And I don't care if people like me or not. You know, as you can tell, I've got a little bit of an attitude from probably just being me over time. But so looking at it, really, it was like, how can I have a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, something so huge that it needs to force me into growing, to change my thinking, to recruit new resources, to develop new capabilities, to build new alliances. And my birthday is July 1st, so it makes a good day to start processes, because it's the start of the third calendar quarter. It's literally halfway through the year. And so I've determined that what I want to do, my mission, and everything's allocating around this now, is to help 100 million people over the next 12 months, to reach them and have some sort of positive impact on them, to get them to make a micro change in themselves, in their environment, in their decisions in their office, in terms of what they're doing, to be able to have slightly better outcomes. And so if I can reach 100 million people this year, when I reach 100 million people this year, that's 100 million people who are doing things slightly better, slightly happier, better intent, you know, a little bit more responsible, making slightly less bad decisions. So the net impact of that on the world is going to be pretty tremendous, because if each one of those only impacts 3 to 5 people on a small basis with it, really the multiplicative effect is that we're reaching out and impacting 250 million people. So that is what drives me. That's why I get up in the morning. That's why I sit there and write. That's why I work with other professionals to help magnify my voice to reach and help more people.
Awesome. And so you want to reach people to get better results and to, you know, to be better in some way. And so What are some of the ways that people can do that?
Well, that's the reason why we're talking right now, is because I can reach out to your network of individuals and add some value to them, to help them improve, to make a little bit better decisions, be slightly happier, move along their path a little bit better. If I can do that, then it helps you, it helps your listeners, and it moves along towards my mission. I do a lot of writing for various trade publications where I'm not paid, but it reaches out to their readers and helps them make choices as to how to build their business that then allows them to further impact more clients. So that is a multiplicative leveraging technique of doing things like that. And the process of writing, as Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about, helps you clarify your thinking and improve yourself. So when I'm writing, if I have to do some research around it, if I have a concept that I want to go deeper into, if I need facts, that then makes me better, but it also creates something that is lasting, it's evergreen, hopefully, that can impact people not just today, but 2 years from now, 5 years from now, people might come across this. And every single person that reads that is then slightly improved in some capacity, and then they can have further impacts. So podcasts, writing, public speaking, the book, the website, all of these are components for this grand mission of reaching out and positively impacting 100 million people this next 12 months.
Excellent. And so we've mentioned the book a couple of times. So do you want to share with us a few details about the book and how and where people can get it? So it's actually
here. It's called Everyday Excellence, A Daily Guide to Growing. And I call it a multivitamin for life, because we all have these different components of our life, whether it's our physical health, our mental health, our spiritual health, nutrition, communication, our relationships, whether personal or professional. So we got all these different components, and life's messy, life's busy. We don't always pay attention to things that we should. So people skip the workout, and then they keep skipping the workout, or they're eating fast food as opposed to eating healthier, or they don't spend much time with their kids or with their significant other. And so it creates these negative downward spirals or negative pressures. So how do we correct for not getting all the minerals and vitamins that you need? You take a multivitamin and you do it every single day, and hopefully it helps with your health. The same way with the book. The book is a daily reader. So sort of like Robert Greene's Daily Laws or the Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. Every single day it's meant to be read by the individual. And the structure is that I have a quote from somebody. Could be the Dalai Lama, could be Dr. Seuss, could be Oprah Winfrey. So there's a quote, there's discussion and analysis around that. And the structure of that is that it's got a lot of personal experiences, a lot of humor, there's a ton of psychology and history embedded in it. So if people really wanted to dig into it, they could say, wow, there's actually some good stuff here. It's not just Joe being flippant. But it is meant to inform and entertain and motivate in some capacities. And it's a little bit like the Oracle of Delphi in that the reader is going to find what they're looking for at that particular point. But one of the big things that separates my book from all the other daily readers out there is that there's an action item. Because thoughts and prayers are nice, but thoughts and prayers and actions actually get stuff done. So we don't change unless we change something. So every day there's an action item. It might be something as simple as smiling at 5 people today, which is one of my favorite ones. Or it might be something as complex as sitting there and writing down all the reasons you're pissed off with somebody, and then going through and physically crossing them off and saying, I forgive you for this reason. I forgive you for this reason. I forgive you for this reason, which that's tough. That is emotionally difficult to go through and do that. And I actually did that one because I read my book every day and go through. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. Ooh, which means that it was a good exercise to go through at that point.
They're the ones that you really need most. So yep. I'm assuming this is the book's available from, where's the
basically anywhere that books are found. So if you go to Amazon, you can get it there. It's on Kindle. You can get it from my website, everyday-excellence.com. basically anywhere you order books online, you can get it. From your local bookstore, they might have to order it. But I like supporting small local independent bookshops simply because I used to basically live in them as a kid. So
excellent. So would you do us the honor just to round up and to finish off? Would you open the book and just read us one at random?
sure. What's your birthday?
February the 6th.
February the 6th. Okay. So, this is a good one. I like this one. So February 6th, the quote is by Oscar Wilde, one of my favorite playwrights. Never judge anyone shortly, because every saint has a past and every sinner has a future.
Excellent.
Okay, so here's an excerpt from it. All the world's a stage and all the men and women mere players, Shakespeare observed. Can we call someone a hero or a villain after the first or second act? Today could be a bad day for someone. Their autistic kid could be having a meltdown while their aging parents are eating and their boss is screaming at them. That person might make a mistake because they are mentally overwhelmed or are so tired that they miss something they normally don't. Does this make them a bad person or a bad parent? Evil people often hide behind magnanimity, giving sums to charity and basking in the do-gooder accolades, while using the spotlight to hide what they're doing in the shadows. Does the temporary halo make them angels or merely hide their horns? That badass covered in tattoos teaching Sunday school after 3 tours and a half dozen wounds, they probably have a lot of red in their ledger that they're working off, and the world on balance will be a lot better off than what they did and are choosing to do now. Who are you or I to judge that book by its funky cover? That goes on much. So then the action item. If you have a strong negative reaction to someone's actions today, pause and put yourself in their shoes for a moment and try to understand why they did what they did.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's nice to get a concrete example, and hopefully we can get people reading the book and living better lives.
Well, if they go to the website, that every single day I put up a microblog, which is very similar to the concept of the book without an action item. So it's got a quote and a little bit of discussion. Same thing with the YouTube channel. They can follow me on Twitter. So if somebody really wanted to start working to improve their lives, there are a lot of free resources that I have available to start along that path. Yes, I love it when people buy books. That helps buy my beer, but I would rather somebody start along the path and start on their human Kaizen, their continuous improvement journey, than to have them spend money on a book that's going to sit on a shelf. Start doing the little things, and then you can start doing the bigger things. And that investment in yourself, that compounds over time. That's exactly the reason why we have this cool nonlinear growth curve on the cover of the book. It is if you do a little bit every single day to improve yourself, to improve your family, to improve your work, to improve your neighborhood, that is over time going to have some pretty tremendous results.
Thank you very much, Joe Templin, for your time. And do you have any last words before I end the recording for today?
Be excellent and grow today.
Awesome. The one thing I almost forgot to ask you, Joe, have you been keeping track of numbers and how close to the, what did we say? What was your target again?
100 million.
100 million.
I've started tracking very preliminarily. I'm at about 2.25 million, but I've got 2 major initiatives that are dropping in the next 2 weeks that could be adding over 2 million per week to that number, and
Excellent.
That would then get us back on track.
Excellent. So we'll be
so
tracking.
As I said, you have to change your thinking. You have to change your actions. If you have a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, you're not going to get there by doing the things that you've been doing right along. You're going to continue your growth, but it takes new thinking to solve these problems, as Albert Einstein said. And so it's forced me to change what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, who I'm working with, and everything because of this great mission. As it says in the Bible, people without a vision will perish. Having this vision is forcing me to be better. Is it comfortable? Absolutely not. But the butterfly, when it goes into the cocoon to metamorphosize, turns into a thing of goo and then comes out this beautiful butterfly that can do new things. It can move in new dimensions, unlike the caterpillar. And so that is what having this mission is doing for me.
Excellent. Thanks to Joe Templin, the man on a mission to improve 100 million lives. Be sure to get your copy of the Everyday Excellence book at your favourite bookstore or visit everydayexcellence.com. You can also connect with Joe at EDE with Joe on Twitter and Facebook, or the Everyday Excellence YouTube channel, links for which will be in the show notes. Join us next week when we'll be talking to Kevin Schroeds, cancer survivor turned coach and plant medicine receipt facilitator.